Hey guys, what is happening? I'm KLF. I know I said I would be bringing you guys more Hearthstone, and so that's what I have for you here today, guys. This is Hearthstone. Now, if you haven't seen the intro or the kind of tutorial type video for Hearthstone that I posted on my channel, go check that out. If you know what Hearthstone's all about and you kind of just you're looking for some strategy, looking for maybe a bit of an explanation on some of the classes or characters in the game, you've come to the right place. So I decided that I'm going to break down and kind of analyze the playstyle and different unique cards and things like that for all the different classes within Hearthstone. I'm going to start off with the Mage. The Mage is the first character, the first class that you get, and it seems fairly straightforward as far as the kinds of cards or trickery that the Mage has. So I'm gonna dive right into that. So let me just go to my collection here. So I do have my custom Mage deck, but I'm not gonna go to that just yet. So looking at all my Mage cards here. Okay, so I believe I have all the basic Mage cards. You get every 2 levels you get a basic card for that class, and I want to say there's 5, maybe 5. Let me check it out. Let me see if I might be missing a few basic cards. Let me check it out. Does it say here? It does not. Oh yeah. See, so the basic Mage set is complete. So I do have all the basic cards. As you can see, on level 10. So by level 10, you will have all the basic cards for each class. Every 2 levels, I'm assuming you get one when you first unlock the class, and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 5. So let's jump back into it. Oh, that was actually the wrong screen. My bad, guys. Okay, so let's talk about the Mage and talk about some of the strategies that revolve around the way the Mage plays. So, not looking at neutral cards, let's just take a look at the cards that are unique to the Mage class. So, there's a couple at the 1 slot, 3 to be precise at the 2 slot, 3 at the 3 slot, 3 at the 4 slot, and 1 at the 7 slot. So keep in mind, guys, there are other Mage cards on top of these. These are merely, because as you can see, I opened one of them in a booster pack. This Mirror Entity, it is considered a common, whereas along with Ice Barrier, while the rest of these cards are basic. So one thing I guess to remember when looking at the cards for each class is each class can use any number of cards from the neutral set. So if for those of you who maybe aren't following along, or those of you who are kind of confused by all this, the neutral set is essentially cards that can be used in any deck of any class. Now, because the neutral cards are common amongst any class or any deck, this means that what sets decks apart are 2 main factors. The first one is your hero power. It differs for each class. And the second main difference is the unique cards that you'll find in each specific class's set. So these neutral cards, you'll find all sorts of cards for all sorts of purposes. So there's a bunch of 1-drops there. Here's some 2-drops and 3-drops. You do get a bunch of neutral cards to start off. I have opened, at this point, I've opened by playing in-game, I have opened, I want to say maybe 4 boosters or 5 booster packs. So, and as you can see, because usually the cards where I only have 1 of, so like this Dread Corsair, I only have 1 of him. As you can see, he's not ×2. Same thing with the Thrallmar Farseer. Now, when looking at the rarities of cards, sorry, I do want to get this stuff out of the way before I can start talking strategy, because it might come into play or it might be important when talking about how to make good decks or good decks that don't involve a lot of higher costing cards. So this Young Priestess right here, this card, like the color of this little gem right here, means that the Young Priestess is a rare. So the white stone, like this, shows that the card is a common, and no color at all, no stone at all, means that it's a basic card. It's part of a basic set which you get by just leveling up each hero, as well as all the basic neutrals you get when you first start up Hearthstone. That's the way it is for the beta, and so I'm assuming that's how it will be. So, and there are also a couple other colors. I think purple is epic, and orange is legendary. I think I have the legendary promo card. Yeah, right here. So this is a legendary. So one thing to remember is that, which is a baseline rule, is that you can only have a max of 2 cards, 2 of any card rather, in each deck, except for legendaries. You can only have 1. So this man, this Glebin Mechatork, I can only have one of him in any deck that I make. Whereas I could have 2 of any other card that isn't a legendary. It's an important distinction because I know there's a lot of trading card games where you can have max of 4, max of 5 of any one card in your deck. In Hearthstone, it's 2. The exception is in the arena, you can have a max of up to 4, but the arena you're going to be drafting. So odds are, as you draft cards, you're probably not going to get more than 2 or 3 really of any type of card. That's just what I've seen from my experience. So let's talk about the mage. Now that I've got all that about the way about deck building, we talk about the neutrals, and we talked about the class-specific cards, and I also talked about the rarities and how much you can have of any card in your deck. So let's get to the actual the mage strategy, or looking at some of the mage cards. So I don't have very many. I only have 12 of the different mage cards unlocked. But from what I do have unlocked, let's take a look at maybe some common themes that we can see amongst the mages cards. So it looks like freeze. There's a couple cards with freeze. Pretty decent mechanic. Yeah, there's this creature as well that affects with freeze. You'll also notice that out of all these cards, all of them are spells with the exception of the water elemental. So that could just be the way that I've unlocked the cards, and most of them are basic, and I've only opened a couple booster packs. But it does seem clear that the mage is very heavy on spell casting. Now, if there's anything that I've learned in my experience with Hearthstone, it's that it's the minions will dominate the game. Hearthstone, while you can build some really crafty decks that revolve around some cool combos and stuff like that, having minions gives you a lot of utility. Spells, you play them once and they're done. So you need the spell that you play to have a bunch of utility. What do I mean by utility? Well, I mean you need to get a good bang for your buck based on the cards that you play. So let's take a look at a card like Arcane Missiles for the mage. It's 1 mana, and it deals 3 damage randomly split among enemy characters. So Arcane Missiles, it's random, so it's not going to be super reliable. Let's say it's your first turn play, you know, and you go first, or your opponent has no minions on the board, then you know the 3 damage is going to be dealt directly to the opposing player. Now, 1 mana for 3 damage is decent. It's when you take a look at something like Fireball, where it's 4 mana for 6 damage, but it's targeted, you might look, oh, gee, you know what? A card like Arcane Missiles isn't so bad. But the fact that it's random means that there are only going to be specific situations in which it's fairly valuable. You might use it and you might get lucky, and let's say your opponent has 2 minions and they're both like 4-1 and 2-1, and Arcane Missiles hits each of them once and then hits the opponent, let's say, again, or as the 3rd shot, rather. So, oh, that worked out there as far as utility is concerned, but because it's randomly split, you can't control where it goes, meaning it's not going to be reliable. A card like Arcane Missiles, yes, it's cheap, but do I really want to use 1 or 2 slots in my deck for Arcane Missiles? Unless I knew I was specifically playing against a weenie deck, which is a deck with a lot of small creatures, then I would consider playing Arcane Missiles, but otherwise it doesn't seem to be a very useful card. Now, let's take a look at a card maybe like Arcane Intellect. So Arcane Intellect is 3 mana for drawing 2 cards. You pay 3 mana, the card replaces itself in your hand, plus you get an additional card. Now, doesn't seem too good. I mean, it's okay, especially if you need some card acceleration. Now, remember, the decks in Hearthstone, for those of you who do not know, are only 30 cards large. So, and your opening hand is only 3 or 4 cards. So you will go through a huge chunk of your deck in most games. You'll go through at least half of your deck unless your opponent or you are rushing for victory. So a card like Arcane Intellect, it has more utility in the sense of, while it's not the greatest card, it's a card where if you play it on turn 3, if you have no other plays, you get a couple cards, yeah, maybe you get something you need, or maybe you get that spot removal or something like that you can use to kill an opponent's minion or something that's giving you trouble. But a card like Arcane Intellect is probably at its best when you have a bunch of excess mana, so you would use Arcane Intellect on turn 7, turn 8, once you've already kind of established board presence. So, the game is close, you both have, 3 or 4 cards in hand, maybe your opponent has a bit less, they have a couple more minions on the board than you. A card like Arcane Intellect on turn 7 still leaves you with 4 mana open to play stuff, and you might draw something you need. So while it replaces itself and gives you a new card from your deck, that itself might be enough utility to give you that win con. Like, the card, it might come up with a Frost Nova, and the opponent has a lot of minions on the board. So a card like Frost Nova is cool because then it gives you an extra turn, it delays the enemy a turn, and lets you kind of get set up. So a card like Arcane Intellect is pretty neat. So now that we've looked at we just looked at a couple examples of some mage cards, but from what you can see, the Mage is all about that trickery. It's all about dealing damage, like massive damage. So a card like Flame Strike, like a later game type card, dealing 4 damage to all enemy minions, that's pretty good. I mean, unless your opponent is running like a huge beatdown deck with larger creatures, dealing 4 damage to all enemy minions is probably enough for a board wipe, an enemy board wipe. Then there's cards like Fireball. I mean, the lesser version of Flame Strike. Arcane Explosion, 2 mana, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. Again, decent against winnie decks. It also, pardon me, it also might give you the edge that you need to gain utility. So when you look at a card like Arcane Explosions, it's 2 mana and to deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. If it does not get any kills, is the card valuable? Does the card have a lot of utility? I would argue it doesn't, unless you have something to combo with Arcane Explosion. So let's say you look at Arcane Explosion and you pair it with cards that give you a plus spell damage. So like this Kobold Geomancer. Because if you have the Kobold in play already, let's say, and then you play the Arcane Explosion, now it's 2 mana to deal 2 damage to all enemy minions, but it's a 2-card combo. So just looking at the Mage cards, and both cards I've opened in boosters so far anyway, are both secrets. So when your opponent plays a minion, summon a copy of it, and Ice Barriers as soon as your hero is attacked, then you gain 8 armor. Both of them, again, the trickery. The secrets are pretty neat because you reveal them whenever that specific action occurs. But the common themes that we can see in the Mage cards are that it's all about dealing damage, drawing cards, or doing things to the board like freezing, or like, dealing 1 or 4 damage to all enemy minions. Fireball is just dealing damage straight up, and Polymorph, it turns a minion to 1/1 sheep. Again, the heavy emphasis on spells shows you kind of the approach that you get with the Mage. Now, I guess to delve a little bit further into this, you could take a look at kind of the utility that you'll have with a card like, let's say, Polymorph. Polymorph, in my opinion, is one of the best Mage cards that I've had so far, that I've seen so far. And it's a basic card as well. I mean, the 4 mana is pretty costly. It's only 1 more mana for straight up removal in something like a rogue deck. But when you look at like a Polymorph itself, it can do something really neat. Like, let's say there's a taunt creature that's really upsetting you. I mean, for the 1 less mana cost as far as a creature, like a straight up creature kill, turning it into a 1/1 sheep, then combining it with the Mage's kill is good. But even if you turn it into a 1/1 sheep and you can save that mana without having to kill it straight up, which is the removal option that the rogue has, you can use that 1 mana elsewhere. You don't necessarily have to kill it, because turning it into 1/1 sheep means it loses all abilities. So a card like Polymorph is good in that sense, because it removes all abilities and also makes it not a threat to you unless you're at 1 or less health. Another tactic that seems to be fairly unconventional that I wouldn't recommend for the Mage is trying to go more direct damage, like throwing things like Fireball or Arcane Missiles and hoping that you hit the opponent and really like whittle their health down. It's not going to happen. That's why spells they're great to augment any deck, but the core is about the creatures. Water Elemental at a 3/6. I mean, a 3/6 for 4 mana is okay. Its ability is pretty good, though, freezing any character damaged by the minion. So let's say you play Water Elemental, and then your opponent doesn't deal with it. Then next turn you can freeze anyone you want, even if it means sacrificing your Water Elemental, or your Water Elemental will live because it has 6 health, and you can also stop a medium size or larger threat. I mean, comparing that, let's say with some neutral cards that you can get at the 4-drop. Like, I mean, looking at some cards at 4-drop, 4 for 3/3, 4 for 2/4, draw a card, 4 for a 2/7. So 4 mana for a 3/6 seems pretty good in this scenario. I did create a Mage custom deck, and I'll show you kind of what I have listed in a sec. So what I did with this deck is I tried to look at I try to take cards that are tricky, as well as some early game creatures and some late game bombs to try and really hinder my opponent. So in the deck, you can see the deck list right here. I mean, this is a video, so I mean, if you want to look at the deck list, give it a pause, like read down. But here's an example Mage deck that I built, which I've had a moderate success with. I've played the Mage deck in play mode. I played against a couple AIs, and I played it in play mode. I went, I believe, 1 and 2 in play mode, and I went 3 and 1 in practice mode with this deck. So pretty decent. There's the curve right there. And the Mage having the hero power for deal 1 damage for 2 mana. It's a bit costly as when you compare it to something like the Hunter, where it's 2 mana for deal 2 damage. But the key here is that you can use Fire Blast to deal damage to opposing minions. So Fire Blast, don't underestimate its value when dealing with weenies. It's good against something like is it the Paladin? The guy that makes tokens. I'm not familiar with all the classes just yet. The guy that makes tokens, because if he makes a token, you can just counter by dealing 1 damage and killing a token, because the token has only 1 power and 1 toughness. Or 1 attack and 1 health, rather. Using my magic terms coming into place. Magic the Gathering terms. But, I mean, when looking down the deck list, I have some early game cards like Murloc Raiders, Voodoo Doctors, I have an Elven Archer, Mirror Image, so something to kind of stall, you know, create a couple O2s with Taunt to give me an extra turn or 2. And then when you look down the list, you're going to see cards like Arcane Intellect, which will help. Only 1 copy, but cards like Polymorph, Gnomish Inventor. So I mean, 4 mana for a 2/4 is okay on its own, but the fact that I get a card, it replaces itself when it comes into play, is pretty neat. You want to be drawing cards as a mage, because when you play spells, after the spell serves its purpose, that's it. It's not going to stay in play and continue to give you those perks. That's probably the main thing I want to emphasize for the mage. Water Elemental, Darkscale Healer is pretty good. I mean, the 5 mana for a 4/5, restoring 2 health, especially if you're really creature heavy. So you have cards like Acidic Swamp Ooze, Bloodfin Raptor. It helps keep them in play if they do take some light damage. These guys, I feel like they're pretty good. The Gurubashi Berserkers. So it's 5 mana for a 2/7, and when it takes damage, you gain +3 attack. When you look at my mage deck, yeah, I don't really have any combos with it, but a card like these Berserkers, you drop them on turn 5, and suddenly your opponent, unless they have straight spot removal, they're kind of leery to deal with it, because if they attack into it but they can't kill it in 1 shot, suddenly now they're looking at an unfavorable trade. Because let's say it takes 4 damage, suddenly it becomes a 5/3. So now, this thing's a 5/3. I'm gonna have to trade with something that has 3 attack and less toughness to get the max utility out of it. So I like a guy like that, as well as looking down at the lower end of the curve. Oh, I can't even drag. I guess that's it. Lord of the Arena as well. I like having taunt guys. I feel like they're decent. I also have a booty big bodyguard in here. I like the taunt guys because, just like with Mirror Image, it buys time. I find if you can buy time and you can draw cards with like Arcane Intellect, that'll let you get to things like your Fireball, or I didn't actually get a chance to put any Flame Strikes in there. I believe I just unlocked it actually. So it gives you time to stall for those late game cards. So Fireball's a mid game card, but something like a Flame Strike, it's a late game card that can devastate the board. If you're hanging out and it's like turn 9, turn 10, and your opponent has like 4 or 5 creatures, you have 0, a single Flame Strike can easily turn the tide. The trades or the utility you'll get out of a Flame Strike, especially on turn 7, it does depend on the deck. But let's say you're playing a creature heavy type deck, a Flame Strike, it'll be 1 card, which is the Flame Strike, and you might trade 3, 4, even 5 creatures for it, which is great utility. So even if you're in a position where you're winning, a Flame Strike can just ensure the fact that you win. So I definitely plan on adding these Flame Strikes to my deck, maybe removing some of these creatures at some of the higher end of the mana curve. But this is just an example of the mage, and this is, I'm kind of just giving my thoughts on how I feel about the mage class. So when you're making a mage deck, I guess use a bunch of the neutral cards, obviously, but I would say the biggest thing to remember is don't overdo it on spells. Make sure you have enough spells to provide utility, or enough mage cards like mage creatures like this that provide good utility while at the same time not sacrificing it with that long-term game, because I don't feel a mage, unless you build a deck tailored specifically for it, like really tailored for it, I don't think the mage has the potential, especially with her fairly costly hero power, to go for any sort of rushing strategies. So as a mage, you kind of want to draw the game out, you want to draw cards, you want to keep your hand stocked, you want to have things like Polymorph or Frost Nova to help deal with your opponent's threats, until you can stall late enough in the game where you can use things like Flame Strikes or Fireballs to start removing the opponent's bigger threats and letting some of your threats through. So that's why don't hesitate to put things like Lord of the Arena or other, I know I put my legendary guy in here, but you can also put like other big boys in there, like some of the ogres and things like that. Don't be afraid to put those late game guys in there, because unless your opponent has direct removal, if you decimate them rather hard enough in the early to mid game, I'd say, then by the time you can stabilize in the late game, you'll be at an advantage. So those are my thoughts on some of the mage cards. I know there are more mage cards, however, these are the only ones that I've unlocked. I feel like I've played quite a bit with my mage, and there's my sample deck list there. If you have any thoughts, opinions, or feedback, guys, just let me know in the comments. But this is what I think about the mage as a class, and how I feel the mage kind of works into the Hearthstone meta. So I would say I do enjoy playing the mage because it does involve thinking. It involves also like a bunch of strategy and planning. Oh, should I kill this? Should I kill that? I'm not too sure. However, I'm not sure if the mage is completely viable. I do feel like there are a lot of decks that counter the mage, especially decks that are very aggressive. So aggressive rogue decks or things like that. I feel like they do a lot to counter the mage. I mean, if you're the mage and you're drawing spells, but you're not getting good trades, or you're not getting enough utility from your spells, things like Fireball, or things like Arcane Explosion. Like, I have 2 Arcane Explosions in the deck, but it's mainly for early game. Because if I'm playing a deck with like a beatdown deck, a deck with huge creatures, Arcane Explosion in the late game isn't going to do anything for me. Let's say my opponent has like a 6-7, a 4-4, and a 4-5 on the board. Arcane Explosion is going to do next to nothing for me, which is why I'm considering maybe taking out one or both cards. So, I mean, I guess that's one thing to kind of keep in mind as the mage, and I do feel like the mage is pretty fun to play though. Guys, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you like what you see, subscribe, like, do whatever. Check out our Facebook, Twitter. I am going to be streaming Hearthstone on Twitch, so check out twitch.tv/KLachievements. That's me. I am KLachievements. I'm KLF for short. Thanks again for watching, guys. Do all that funny business, subscribe, like, all that. If you like what you see, I plan on having one video for each class found in Hearthstone, so stay tuned for those.